Hi everyone! As promised, in this video, I'm going to show you how to knit the fern lace stitch. I posted a video on the baby fern lace stitch a few weeks back, and I wanted to show you this one. And I've knit this swatch in the same exact yarn that I'd knit the swatch in the baby fern lace video. So I've provided a link to the baby fern lace video at the end of this video as well as in the description field. But here is the fern lace stitch. As you can see, it provides a wonderful fabric. The pattern looks really pretty. You can clearly see the fern leaves, and it is really not that much more difficult to knit than the fern lace stitch, the baby fern lace stitch. So if you're familiar with those techniques, then this should not be a problem. If you're brand new to lace knitting, I would suggest a couple more simpler lace knitting patterns first before trying this one on. But again, once you start doing it, you'll realize even though it looks wonderfully complicated, it's really not. And what I wanted to do before I get started with the demo of the pattern, I've provided the pattern details in the description field below, but I wanted to show you this. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with reading lace patterns, but what I did was I took the written pattern and I actually put it down on a chart like this. So sometimes it's easier to follow lace patterns on a chart than it is by reading them. And as you can see, when you look at the chart, it's really not that bad, the pattern itself. And the way you do charts is you actually start like row 1, and in this case our first row is going to be the wrong side row. We start this way, and then row 2 this way, and row 3, row 4, and you keep going like that. And they'll have little symbols that tell you what to do when you come to that step. So for instance, here in row 2, after the first stitch, the second stitch, it's a little caret, and that means you have to do an SK2P. So if you just follow the symbols on the chart, it's sometimes easier to knit lace by following the chart rather than the written out pattern. Now, unfortunately, I don't have a place where I can post this right now. Once I have my website up and running, hopefully soon, I will be able to post this there. But for now, you can always follow the written pattern as well as looking at the demonstration. So this swatch here I've knit up is over 59 stitches. So the pattern itself is a multiple of 29 stitches plus 1 for an edge stitch. Okay, so this one was 59, so it's 29 times 2 plus 1. And I've done about 4 pattern repeats. Now the pattern itself is repeated over 10 rows, and it forms this beautifully deep scalloped edge, almost like a V. And then on the other end, when you bind off the pattern, it's a more gentler scallop. So let me show you how this is knit up. And really, once you know once you've knit up the first couple rows, the rest of the rows are pretty much the same thing. They're just the pattern is staggered. As you can see here, these little circles are yarn overs, and as you can see with each row, the yarn overs keep moving out. These edge SK2Ps stay in the same place, and that's what creates those fern leaves. So we start off on a wrong side row. So for this demonstration here, I've only cast on 30 stitches, so 29 plus 1. And the first row, as well as every other row on the wrong side, you're going to do the same exact thing. And that is, you're going to purl the first stitch, and then starts the pattern repeat. Now in this case, because I only have 29 stitches, I'm just going to do this one time. But if you're making a project like a blanket and you have multiple 29 stitch repeats, then you'll keep doing this repeat throughout those 29 stitches. So here goes the pattern repeat. It's purl 13. So I'm going to count these down: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. And then you knit 2 stitches, and then you purl 14. So if you add those together, purl 13, knit 2, purl 14, they add up to 29 stitches, which is our 29 stitch repeat. So in my case, it's essentially purl all the way to the end, since I only have 30 stitches. And our first stitch was a purl one, so we've already accounted for that one. All right, and so every other row, when you're on the wrong side, this is what you're doing. So you get to relax a little bit on this row, because you're not doing any of those patterny things, as I like to call them. All right, so that's the end of row 1. Now row 2 the pattern starts. So the repeat is, you start off right with the repeat, and the last stitch is, and you keep repeating the 29 stitch pattern until you get to the last stitch, and then the last stitch is just a knit one. So the pattern repeat is, you knit the first stitch, and then you do an SK2P. Now I'm going to have you slip the stitch knit twice. So SK2P means slip 1, knit 2 together, and then pass the slip stitch over. And in the baby fern lace stitch, I had slipped the stitch purlwise, but here it looks actually better if you do slip it knitwise. So I'm going to go ahead and insert my needle as if to knit and just bring the stitch over. Then you knit the next 2 stitches together, and then you pass that slip stitch over. So the second stitch from the needle, on the right needle, you insert your left needle through that and bring it over. All right, so that's an SK2P. Then you knit 9. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right. Then you do a yarn over, which means you're going to bring the yarn to the front, and a knit 1. And now you're increasing a stitch because your yarn is in the front and you're knitting 1, and that's okay. That's what we want. Then you do a yarn over again. So it's a yarn over, knit 1, yarn over. All right. Now the next 2 stitches are purled. They're purled too, right? So if you just were to purl right now with the yarn in the front, you're not creating that extra stitch which we want to happen here. So if you've done a yarn over and your next stitch is a purl, you have to essentially do the entire yarn over. So take it all the way around, bring it to the front so that you have created that extra stitch. That's the whole purpose of doing that yarn over. Okay? And then you do a purl 2. And then you take the yarn to the back. Oh, no, sorry. You do a purl 2, then you do the same thing. You do a yarn over, knit 1, yarn over. Okay, so now your yarn is in the front, right? Your next stitch is going to be a knit. In this case, we don't need to take the yarn over because when we knit the next stitch, see that the yarn over naturally happens. So just don't take the yarn to the back after you've done those 2 purls. Leave the yarn in the front. That's your yarn over, and then knit 1. And then yarn over again. So you bring the yarn to the front. Then you're going to knit 9. Okay, so again we've created that stitch. And you'll encounter this thing where the yarn over is in front of a purl only once in this stitch. In this entire pattern, you'll encounter it only for this second row. All right, I have lost my count, so I'm going to check and see where was my last yarn over. And you can check your yarn overs. You can see that these little diagonal ones were our yarn overs. So this was my yarn over, which means after that I've knit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, and then you have to do an SK2P again. So remember, slip the stitch, knit twice, knit 2 together, pass the slip stitch over. And the last stitch, we just do a knit. And that's it. That's really the technique that you're going to use pretty much for all the rows, except you're going to stagger them. So I'm still going to go ahead and demonstrate the entire 10 rows in this swatch here. But if you want to try this pattern, want to stop the video and you're confident to go working on it, then you can just follow the pattern and do that. So now I'm on row 3. I'm going to do my pattern repeat, and it's the same thing. You purl the first stitch, and then you purl the next 13, and then you knit 2 and purl 14. So I'm going to speed up through this process, and we'll meet up again on row 4. I have now completed row 3, and before I get started with row 4, just wanted to refer back to this chart here. And as you can see, we did this second row just now before we did the third row. We did our SK2P, we knit 9, we did a yarn over, we knit 1, we did a yarn over, then we purled 2, then a yarn over, knit 1, yarn over, and then knit 9, SK2P. So on either side of these two knits that you do in the center and then the two purls that you do on the wrong side, the pattern is essentially symmetrical on either side. Okay, just wanted to show you that, and then that way it works out to be really easy compared to some of the non-symmetrical patterns. Excuse me, sorry, I'm getting over a bit of a cold. All right, so row 4, we are now going to knit 1. We always start off the same way, right? As you can see in the pattern, knit 1, SK2P. So slip, knit 2 together, pass the slip stitch over. And in the previous row, we had knit 9. Now we're going to knit 8. So we're decreasing it by 1. We're kind of staggering it by 1. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And if you're hearing some noises outside my room, we've just adopted 2 cats, and those cats are playing with each other. So I apologize for that. All right. After knitting 8, you're going to do a yarn over, knit 1, yarn over, knit 1. So you're going to do the yarn over, knit 1 twice. Then you come to the middle 2 purls, the middle 2 purl stitches. So just regular purl 1, purl 2. And then we're going to do a knit 1, yarn over, knit 1, yarn over. And then I'm going to knit 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Then our friendly SK2P. And then the last stitch is always just knit. All right, so that was the end of row 4. I'm now going to do row 5, the purl row, and I'll meet you back up. We'll speed up through this and meet you at the start of row 6. All right, so I'm at the end of row 5, and now we'll get started with row 6. Just one other quick point I wanted to make. In this pattern, every row, your stitches are going to be the same count at the end of it. So you can always just double check if you're not sure where, if you've done the row right or not, you can at least count the stitches, and the stitch count should be the same for every row. All right, row 6. Same as row 4 and row 2, except we're now moving things by one more stitch out. So first stitch, knit 1, next SK2P, so slip, knit 2 together, pass the slip stitch over, and now we knit 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And we do our yarn over, knit 1, yarn over, and then we're going to knit 2. So knit 1 and knit 2. And then we do our purl 2, and you can see those 2 purls right there in the middle. We're going to do our 2 purls, and then we're going to knit 2, just regular 2 knits, then yarn over, knit 1, yarn over. Okay, and then we're going to knit 7 on this side. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Last thing to do is a slip, knit 2 together, pass the slip stitch over, and the last stitch is a knit 1. That's the end of row 6. Row 7 is our purl row again. But remember, it's not purl all the way, it's purl a certain number and then those knit 2s. So don't forget to do those knit 2s, because it's easy to just keep purling in the row and forget about the knit 2s. And that's happened to me. So one other thing to watch for when you're doing these purl rows is those yarn overs. They'll hang loose like that, and sometimes they'll come off. And so if that happens, just pick it back up. Okay, so I'm actually gonna do this row rather than speed through it, since I'm already at the halfway point. Oh, sorry, a couple more to go. I actually don't even count. Once I have a little bit knit up, I don't even count. I wait till I come to these two knit rows, and then I know I need to do 2 knits. And then I keep purling all the way through till I get to those 2 knits again, and then do those 2 knits. So that's an easy sort of shortcut when you're on these purl rows. Once you have a little bit knit up, you can do that. Even if you're doing multiple stitch repeats and you've cast on, I don't know, 2 or 3 times the 29 stitch repeat, if you're making a big blanket or something, then it's just easier. You just keep purling till you get to those 2 knits, and then you knit them. But remember to knit them. All right. And that's it. And you can start to see that this is sort of, coming in together, and I'll talk more about that in blocking towards the end. All right, so that was row 7, and it helps to have a row counter too, by the way, or at least check off as you're working, as you're doing this, to know which row you're on, because otherwise you forget. I'll tell you the shortcut also to remember, to figure out which row you're on towards the end, but initially might help to actually count the rows. Okay, row 8. So we knit the first stitch, then we do our SK2P, and that's what I like about this pattern, that once you get going with it, it's really very, very simple. All right, SK2P, and now we knit 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and we do our yarn over, knit 1, yarn over, and now we have 3 stitches to go to the center point of that fern leaf, so we're just going to knit 3. Then we come to our 2 purls in the middle, so we do our purl 1 and purl 2. And then we're doing a symmetrical thing on the other side, right? So we're doing knit 3 first, 3, yarn over, knit 1, yarn over, and then we're going to knit 6. And our SK2P, and knit 1. And that's row 8. 2 more rows left. I'm going to speed up through row 9 and then meet you back up on row 10. That is the end of row 9, and now our final row 10. So same exact thing. We're going to knit 1, slip, knit 2 together, pass the slip stitch over, and now we're just going to knit 5. So you'll notice that the number of stitches that have been knit continuously in each row have gone down, starting with 9, and now we're on 5. Then we do our yarn over, knit 1, yarn over, and now we'll have to knit 4, 2, 3, and 4 till we get to that center point of those 2 purls. Then we're going to purl those 2, and symmetrical on the other side. So we knit 4 first, then we do our yarn over, knit 1, yarn over, and then we knit 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then our SK2P, slip, knit 2 together, pass the slip stitch over, and then knit 1. And that is one 10-row repeat. Now I'm using these short needles here for this demonstration, and the 30 stitches are barely fitting on there, but you'll notice that actually, let me do this. Let me actually grab one of these longer ones, and I'll transfer these stitches here so I can show you a few things. But that's it. So you'll keep repeating at the end of row 10. You'll start back up at row 1, and keep repeating this all the way through to your project's desired length. And then you just do a regular bind off. Actually, you repeat row 1 one more time so that you are on a knit row when you do the bind off. Okay, so rather than do the bind off on a wrong side row, just do one more wrong side row and then do the bind off at the end. So just wanted to show you, when you do knit up a swatch, it will scrunch up a little bit, like you can see here. So this will need to be blocked. Okay, so what I've done here is, after I finish knitting up this swatch, I actually I take a piece of towel and I take little pins, and I stretch this out and pin it to that piece of towel, and then I take a hot iron on the steam setting and just kind of hold it above that, maybe an inch above it, to let the steam kind of come in and set it. One other way of doing it is you could actually also use a spray bottle and spray this and kind of wet it and then let it dry in this blocked shape, and then it lays nice and flat, as you can see here. Now, a couple things to point out. Each one of these little leaf sets is one pattern repeat, and I have done 2 sets of 29 stitches here, right? So if I continue doing this, I would just be making this part here, but because I have 2 sets, I have a longer, you can see I have 2 rows of fern leaves here. And again, the little holes that are formed here, sorry, I have so much cat hair in my house right now with the 2 little kittens. Okay, so each of these holes is being formed by the yarn overs, right? So there should technically be 5 sets of holes because we did 5 rows of those pattern rows, and you can see here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? This was a yarn over, knit 1, yarn over, and then we have our 2 purl stitches, and then yarn over, knit 1, yarn over. And with each row, those yarn overs are staggered a little bit, so they're spread out from these middle 2 purl rows that you can see that go through all the way. And then these edges here are our SK2 piece, right? So it's really not that bad when you're working and you're not sure which row you're on. You can check to see, how many holes are showing in your pattern, and then that you need to start on either a row 8 or row 6, etc. If you're on a wrong side row, then you know that it's just the purl, the 2 knits, and then the purl, 2 knits, purl, 2 knits all the way through. So really not that difficult. I think it'll make for a wonderful scarf, or even a cowl. You could knit up a cowl like this, and then kind of seam it together with this pretty edge. But either ways, if you try this pattern for a project, do let me know how it works out for you. If you have any questions at all, leave them in the comments field. As always, like, subscribe, share, and hope to share a lot more videos with you in this upcoming year. As always, thanks so much for watching. And again, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments field. And happy knitting!